and welcome to Self-Taping for Caregivers 101. My name's Robin Holdaway. I'm an actor. I'm also a director at the Young Actors Company. Self-taping and sending off auditions can feel super nerve-wracking, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through every step of the process. This video is going to have 4 parts. The first is going to talk about the brief, the email you get sent, and how to decode it all, working out what it means. The second part is the setup and the technical side of self-taping. We'll talk about the equipment you might need, background, and everything in that genre. Third, we're going to look at acting. We'll look at the common mistakes that you might see your actor making. We'll also discuss a little bit about what they need to prep and how to get the best out of your actor from a self-tape. Finally, we'll talk about how to upload, edit, send off the tapes, and of course, the most difficult bit, what happens next. Section 1, the brief. To start any audition process, you'll get an email from the Young Actors Company agency. This might be a tagmin email or a spotlight character breakdown. Now, I've made a fake email here for us to look through. The first thing to note in the email is the dates. When would your actor be needed for this project? And are they available for the whole period? It's really important to keep your agent updated with any changes to your availability. Otherwise, you risk being submitted for projects that you can't then do. If this is a screen project, like this one is here, it may say a long stretch of time would be needed, like shooting dates 14th of November to the 12th of February. Please note any conflicts within this time. Now, don't worry, your actor is unlikely to be needed for every single day in this time period. However, it is important for you to let the YAC agency know of any potential conflicts. This might be things like holidays or family events, things like that. A lot of the time, they can work around one-off days. But if your actor's going to be unavailable for a long stretch of time, it might not be the right project for them. If it's a shorter project, like a commercial, they may only need them for a couple of days at a time. If the project dates are clear, the next thing to look for is when is the tape due in. Now, ideally, a casting director will give you 7 days or more, a whole week to work on your take. Unfortunately, it can be as little as 24 hours notice. If your actor is struggling with this, especially if they are younger or if they have any additional support needs, please do contact the YAC agency and ask whether or not you can have an extension on this due date. Now, that's not always possible, but it never hurts to ask. It might also be hard for you as a caregiver to find the time to make the tape within a very short window. And if that's the case, again, just ask if you can have a little bit more time. If your actor is available for the production dates and you're able to get the tape in on time, then it's time to look at the role. Things to note. Is the project for stage or is it for screen? The approach is slightly different. This one I've mocked up here is a screen role. What individuals are involved in the project? Who is the director? Who's the casting director? It may also list producers, DOPs. This can be a great opportunity for you to do a bit of research into their previous work. Have a look at what sort of things they've made before, if you can, to get an idea of their style and what they like to do. Next to note, what is it your actor's being asked to tape, and do you have all the attachments to the email? You may be asked for sides, and these are sometimes multiple scenes. If you don't have the attachments, please message the YAC agency as soon as you're able so that we can get those sent out to you. It may be that your actor hasn't been sent any sides and they're being asked to improvise their audition. We'll talk about this later on. Have you been sent any reference materials? Your actor may be sent the script for the film, for the episode, or for the play in order to give them context for the scene they're about to perform. Do your best to read everything through. You may even be able to watch previous older episodes if it's a long-running series. Are there any specific language or accent requirements? If yes, is your actor comfortable performing that? If not, please do let YAC know. We might be able to help them out or direct them to appropriate resources. Let's have a look at the character. How old are they? Have you been given a character description? This may only be one line, something really brief, but read it through carefully and make note of any words or adjectives that jump out to you. Do you need an ident or a slate? For most projects, they will ask you for one, but don't worry, we'll talk about how to make that later on. Does the email ask for any specific taping requirements? This might be the shot size or the background. How are you being asked to upload the file? Is it to be sent by a Dropbox directly to the YAC agency, or is it to upload to Tagman? Do you need to fill in any forms? This is one that trips me up. So often with things like commercials, they'll ask you to fill in something called a head sheet. This may have your actor's wardrobe or their dates and requirements, things like allergies, stuff like that on it. It should be fairly simple information, and the form should be linked within the email. If it isn't, again, contact the YAC agency. Once you feel certain that you've covered all the requirements and you've sent any emails, asked any questions you need to ask, it's time to move on to setup. You do not need to purchase a ton of fancy camera equipment. Your mobile phone will do nicely. You don't need to be filming in 4K or 8K. HD or Ultra HD will do just fine. This is because later on you will need to compress it, and any higher quality than that will be lost anyway. Make sure you have enough space on your phone before you start filming. Wipe the lenses over with a microfiber cloth and make sure you are recording both audio and visuals. You're going to need a tripod or a way to secure your phone so it doesn't shake while you're filming. I like this one. It combines a tripod, a ring light, and this little camera holder. In terms of lighting, you just need to make sure your actor can be seen clearly without too many dark shadows. Natural light is ideal, so if you can set up opposite a window, that's great. If you are relying on artificial light alone, you might want to purchase an additional directional light to go with overhead lighting. I've mentioned this ring light. This can be quite nice. You can also buy light boxes, and this is quite a diffuse lighting. You don't want anything too harsh. Now, yes, you can buy it, but you've probably already got something in your home that will do the trick. Just a little side light or a spotlight, something like that. You do want to try and make sure that the lighting is the same temperature. Now, some lights, like this ring light, you can change the temperature on. We can have a warm light, a cool light, or this is a mixture. So I can show you warm lighting, cool lighting, or this mixture, which is just what I tend to prefer. If you do have lots of different temperatures of light, it might throw off the color balance when you're trying to edit. This first example is just too dark. You lose my features, and we've also got some weird shadow. This is way too directional. Again, half of my face is lit, but the other half is in quite high contrast shadow. It might look nice and artistic, but it's not what we need for a self-tape. This third example is pretty much what we're looking for. I can be seen clearly without too many shadows. You've even got these little white flecks of light in my eyes thanks to my ring lamp. It could probably be nicer and fancier if I wanted it to be, but I don't need it to be. So do not panic about lighting. Just do what you can and make sure your actor can be seen. Unless you're in a very large, echoey room or perhaps a very loud household, you probably don't need to be worried about microphones. Your phone's inbuilt mic will do just fine. Now, I make a lot of videos, so I have invested in this little Bluetooth lapel mic. You can get those online very easily, but it's by no means obligatory. You just need to make sure that your actor can be clearly heard. In terms of background, it should be as blank as possible. It does not need to be white, but perhaps not some very bold colours or patterned wallpaper. Try to take down any busy photos or pictures if you can, but again, please don't stress. No one ever lost a roll due to an errant light switch. Self-tapes normally need to be filmed in landscape in what we call a mid-shot, which is what I'm in here. Now, some self-tapes might ask for something more specific. They might want a close-up shot, or a wider shot which shows all the way down to your waist. This is quite a wide shot for me. I'd probably cut into this in the final edit. Different briefs might ask for more specific things, but it is always worth double checking. If you're uncertain, please do contact Yak. You can also film in a wider shot and then narrow down, zoom in during the editing process if you're still unsure. It can be helpful for you to have a mark on the floor to show your actor where to stand. That way, if you need to keep stopping the tape and starting again, you don't have to reposition them every time. In an ideal world, your actor will have learned all of their lines perfectly. However, this doesn't always happen. Now, for stage, it's a little bit different. Sometimes you don't need to know them as perfectly, partly because they often give you longer scenes. But for screen, you do need, ideally, to be off-book. Your actor should be familiar with their lines, but if they haven't been able to learn them completely, then there's a couple of little tricks you can do. Ideally, you don't want them holding their lines because it will mean that they're looking down a lot and they haven't got a great eye line. We'll cover eye lines a little bit more later. So what can you do? Print them off and stick them to the tripod that you are using. So if I was filming here, I could take my lines and stick them to the tripod. That way I can just glance down to look at them. Alternatively, you can use a music stand. Place it next to your camera and make sure they can clearly see the sides. Again, this can be printed or this could be on a large screen like a tablet. You can also just hold up the lines while you're next to the camera so that they can read them. We will talk more about lines in the next section. Your actor does not need to be in full costume, hair and makeup. Just a nod to the character is fine. For example, if I was auditioning for a period drama, something like this shirt would be great. Hair does need to be off face, so maybe if they've got a fringe, like this, you want to avoid this. pin it back, or just make sure it's in a style that allows us to see the whole face. A lot of the time, younger actors will be auditioning for roles that are younger than themselves, because when they start to get into kind of mid-teenage age, often they will use older actors because that's easier in terms of licensing. So quite often, your actor may be asked to play down. Makeup can be quite aging. Now, covering blemishes or anything that you feel incredibly uncomfortable about, that's all fine, but you don't want to be doing a full eye, you don't want full face makeup, because again, it can be aging, and it's also not an accurate representation of your actor. What you don't want to happen is for your actor to do something on tape, and then if they were to walk into a room, they would look completely different. So just a simple nod to the character is fine. Keep hair off face and keep makeup to a minimum. While you're setting up all the technical side of things, your actor needs to be focusing on their character, using all the tricks and tips that we teach them at Yak. That isn't just learning the lines, that's asking themselves the questions that we will be asking in the next section of this video. If your actor is uncertain, they are always welcome to contact us, their directors, and we may be able to help. If not actually at Yak, then maybe we could give them some advice. Different actors will prepare in different ways. Some will want to do loads and loads of prep. Some might want to make a music playlist. Some might want to do minimal and be as natural as they can. It's whatever works for them. If they are a younger actor, they may need your support in learning those lines and getting more comfortable with the text. If they're older, they may be more comfortable doing that on their own. Although, as I said, you have a great resource here at Yak. Please do come and see us if you have any questions. The final part of the setup is a mental one. Life is super stressful, and self-tapes can just add to that. Actors, especially young actors, tend to be really good at picking up on people's emotions around them. So if you're feeling really stressed and uncomfortable, that might transfer onto them and impact their performance. I'm not asking you to be perfect, but do make sure you take a moment before you tape to just give yourself a beat of calm, and remember, this is your opportunity to work with your actor on the thing that they often love and are most passionate about. It's a chance for you and them to share in the work and to have some fun together. Mindset is such an important factor in auditioning, in self-taping, and in acting itself. That is especially true for younger actors. They may be nervous and be incredibly stressed. You are playing the part of their reader, their director, their editor, their caregiver. That is a lot for you to manage. So do make sure you take some time for yourself, ground yourself, take a breath, and be sure you're entering this process in the most positive state of mind that you possibly can. You don't need to be perfect, but even just a few seconds can make a massive difference. Let's put all of that together. By the end of this technical session, you should have your setup established. I've got my lovely blank background. A reminder, it does not have to be white, just something simple that's not distracting and whatever you can manage in your space. I've got my tripod set up here with my ring light. You don't have to have a ring light, but you can see my face is clearly lit. I've also got my microphone set up and recording. I've got my phone on my tripod and it's recording for me in Ultra HD. It should look something like this. Once you're all set up and your actor's confident that they know what they're doing, it's time to move on. Okay, we're moving on to the acting. Now, a lot of this will be covered by your actor. They will be doing what they've been practicing at Yak. They'll be working on their text. As I said, if this is a younger actor, they may need more support with that. If it's an older actor, they've probably already got a bit of a process worked out. It never fails to help if you're able to remind them about learning the lines, however. Let's assume they've done all that wonderful prep work and you are ready to get filming. It can be really helpful to calm the nerves by just reading the scene through with them first. Don't worry too much about the acting, just get the lines out and make sure they know what they're saying. Be certain they understand every single word. It's so obvious on camera when an actor doesn't understand what they're saying. If they don't understand it, talk it through with them and make sure they get the meaning. The other thing is pronunciation. This trips up even the most seasoned professional actor. If you're uncertain, there are plenty of tools online that I'll link in the resources to double check the pronunciation of certain words. If these are words that are unique to the genre, perhaps they're specific sci-fi words, you can also contact the Yak team and we can ask the production for the pronunciation for you. We read so much about a person's emotional state, through their eyes. So eyeline is really, really important. It's rare that your actor will be asked to bottle it, which means looking right down the camera lens like I'm doing now. It might say that specifically in the brief, so do watch out for it, but most of the time you want their gaze to be slightly to the side of the camera, like this. It can really help your actor if you position yourself close to the camera lens on the other side. That way they can use you for an eyeline. If for some reason you can't be placed near the camera, a soft toy can also work well. That just gives your actor something to look at and maintain that eye contact, close to the lens, but not looking directly down it. You also want to avoid eye lines that are looking too far off in one direction or the other, because it makes it harder for the people watching to understand what your actor is feeling. It can be common for actors to glance down a lot during performances. If you notice your actor doing this, encourage them to think up. So when their character perhaps is thinking, or maybe if they're looking for their line, rather than looking down, look up above the camera. This will encourage them to lift their faces and chin up slightly and ensure we see their face and get their full performance. If your actor does need lines for their self-tape, the goal is for them to not look as though they are looking at their lines. So practice reading at a distance and just glancing down at lines or glancing at lines to jog memory rather than reading along. Because if they're just reading, then we lose any sense of performance. If I was performing my self-tape here, I might have attached my lines just below my phone and I only want to glance down at occasional words to remind myself where I was in the script. Learning lines is a skill that can be taught and can be practiced. The more they do it, the better they're going to become. If you're worried about it, talk to your YAC teachers. We are here to help. Hopefully your actor will be comfortably off book and be able to look at you and direct their performance to you. It can be really helpful if you as a reader can react. If they change something within you, let them see it on your face. You don't need to be a fabulous actor, but even some small slight changes in maybe the way you're saying the lines, or again, letting expression show on your face, can be really helpful for the actor that is self-taping. Once both you and your actor are comfortable with the technical side, you can talk to them a little bit about the acting. I have already said how important it is that they understand the words and how to pronounce them, but it's also important that they understand what is going on in the scene as a whole. This is when we can talk about the given circumstances. This might be a phrase they're familiar with from YAC. So the first question you can ask your actor is, who are they playing? Who is that character? And who are the other characters in the scene? And for a bonus point, you can also ask, are there any characters that are mentioned in the scene and who are they to your actor's character? What sort of relationships are they? How does your actor's character feel about those other characters? Where is this happening? Where is this scene set? When is it happening? Both in terms of when chronologically in the play or in the film, and also what time of day is it? What is going on in the scene? Again, just make sure they understand. That includes understanding the perhaps different emotional beats that happen and what changes in the scene. Finally, why is it happening? That why is super important. You might want to ask your actor, especially if they're a bit older, what their character's objective is. What do they want to get out of the scene? And does that objective change throughout the scene? It might be that at some point there's a big emotional shift and what they want goes from one thing to another, and it's really important that they make a note of that. It's best not to try and play too many objectives in a scene because then it can get a little bit muddled. You can also ask them what gets in the way of them achieving their objective. What is the obstacle in the scene? What are they fighting against? I said it earlier, but what is it that changes in the scene? When does it change and why does it change? Often tapes are given because casting directors want to see a certain side of a character, or maybe they want to see your actor portraying certain emotional beats or an emotional journey as a whole. It can help to sort of think a bit meta on this level. Try and think, what does the casting team want to see from this scene and how can we best show it? Look back at that original breakdown that we were given. See if any words about the character jump out. How can we use these words to direct our scene? For our younger actors, we don't have to go into all of this detail. Just ask them what they think their character might be feeling during the scene and what that character might want to happen. You can also ask your actor how they might feel if they were in that situation. For older actors, you can remind them about all the techniques that we go through at YAC. That might be things like actioning or Laban efforts or doing improvisation, emotional memory, energy centers. There are loads. If you're uncertain, I'm sure they'll be able to tell you. If you're in a rush, you don't have to do everything. Just check that they understand what's happening and maybe come up with a few different ideas about how the scene could be played. Once you're comfortable with the technical and the acting, it's time to get started. Press record, give them a beat of silence, and off they go. It might be that this first take they do is the best one all day, or it might be the first pancake, and that is absolutely fine. Just see what comes out. This is pretty much what your actor will be seeing. You, standing next to the camera, reading the lines. You will be reading all the lines that aren't the actor's lines. You don't need to read the stage directions. Please try to read at a normal volume. Careful not to get too loud because you're going to be closer to the camera and to the microphone than your actor will be. Let your actor get that first take out of the way and see what happens. If it's a very short and simple scene, then you really don't need to over-egg it. If all your actor does is walk in, say a line and walk off, then please don't agonize about actioning every moment of it. Just keep it as relaxed and natural as you can. Natural is one of those words that is often bandied about, but what does it mean? Often when we say natural, we mean real. Now, screen acting is a little different from stage acting. You don't want to be creating these larger-than-life characters. Your actor doesn't need to be seen right at the back of the auditorium. Sometimes even just thinking about a line will show on your actor's face because that camera is so up close as the audience. This doesn't mean that your actor isn't going to be doing anything at all. They do still need to be conveying the meaning of what they're saying, as well as the emotion of the scene and some sense of character. It just doesn't need to be pantomime-sized if it's for a screen role. Some scenes might be larger by nature. Maybe it's a big dramatic climax, or maybe it's a horror film. There may be tonal notes within the casting brief, the email, so do double check there. Commercials are also slightly different. They're often improvised and may be based more on reactions than on dialogue. Some want really realistic, naturalistic performances, but some, especially humorous ones, might want larger than life. Do your best to follow the brief and to follow the script and stage directions, but sometimes it's not going to be possible to do everything exactly as it's being asked. For example, your actor might be asked to be having fun on the beach and it's 7 p.m. in February. Try to mime what you can and give an idea of the vibe. The same is true if there are very, very physical stage directions, things like fighting or falling over. Your actor often doesn't need to do a full fight sequence. Just an idea of movement or something like that can be really helpful. If that action sequence is really important to the meaning of the scene, then do try to contact the act and we'll be able to talk your actor through it. Many projects will ask your actor for an ident or for a slate. This is really simple. It consists of your actor saying their name and often their agent or any other requested information to camera. They'll then turn to the side to show their profiles. It might feel a little bit like a mugshot. And often for commercials, they'll also ask to see your hands. They may also ask for a full body shot. These are a nightmare to film in landscape unless you have a ton of space. So often you'll film that in portrait instead and add that in during the edit. I like to film a nice close-up of any of the details and then, like I say, add in that portrait shot to the side in the edit. It'll look a little bit like this. Once you have your first take, be sure to watch it through. Make sure your actor can be seen and heard and that their eye line is in the correct place. Your actor may not want to watch themselves back at this point, and please don't make them. If there are some acting issues, I'll be listing the most common ones and how we tackle them in a moment. If your first take has any technical issues, then correct them and try again. I would recommend that you put each take in a separate file so that it doesn't become too long and too large for you to edit later. If you are using a separate microphone, bear in mind you might have to do a clap so that you can sync the audio and visuals in the edit. If your actor forgets their line or breaks character or something goes wrong, then stop the take and start again. You want what's called a clean take because you're not going to be editing different clips together. If your take is clean and all the technical side works well, then you can start talking about a few different acting options. Some casting directors will only ask for one take, but some might want to see a few different options of how your actor interprets their character. If this is the case, then encourage your actor to think about how they might be able to perform the scene differently, maybe with a different objective, or maybe changing the stakes of the scene. You might want to focus on a different word that was included in the character description. For example, if your first take was very quirky, then your second one might be more upbeat. There is no point in sending two nearly identical takes, so don't be afraid to try something a little bit different. Don't be tempted to do too many takes. It risks the scene becoming overworked and really stressful. It will also be a nightmare to edit. I don't like to put a hard limit on the amount of takes you should do for a tape, but you really don't need to be filming a scene more than 6 or 7 times if you've got those cleanly, unless you've got lots of technical issues. Once you're happy with your takes, make sure they've saved to the phone, and that's both audio and visual. Then it's going to be time to edit, upload and send them off. But wait, what if something's going wrong with the acting and you can't work out why? Here are some of the common issues I see and perhaps some suggested fixes. If your actor is being too big and too dramatic, encourage them to talk to you without worrying too much about the character. Try throwing away the line, not in terms of volume, but just lowering the stakes of the scene. How would they have this conversation if they were having it with a friend at school? We don't need to be projecting to the back of an auditorium, but we do need to make sure all the lines are well articulated and can be understood. If your actor is being too small, especially with their emotions, then remind them what is at stake for their character during the scene. What will happen if your character does not achieve what they want to achieve, does not meet their objective, versus what will happen if they do? What is the worst case scenario and what is the best case scenario? Remind them to share what they're thinking and really try to create a connection with your actor. Allow your reactions to show on your face so that the actor can see that what they are doing is having an impact on you. That's how we create this genuine connection. Encourage them to really try and change you, changing your emotional state, stuff like that. If your actor keeps forgetting their lines, even if they've already learned them and just the stress of the tape is getting to them, then just make sure those lines are visible. Hold them up or stick them to the tripod. If your actor isn't really changing during the scene, if they're not following that emotional journey, then go back and talk about those different emotional beats. How does it change and why does it change? How is the character they're playing different at the end of the scene from how they were at the beginning of the scene? Why does that happen? A really common problem is that your actor sounds like they are reciting lines. They might say a line exactly the same in every single take. This is probably the most common thing that I see, especially in young actors, and a really good cue is remind them to find the thoughts in the moment. It's always more exciting for us as an audience to see somebody realizing something new rather than remembering something by rote. Let the thought drop into their head and then say it as if it's brand new, as though they've just realized it. How do they react to that thought? What do they think about that thought? If your actor is stuck in a specific way of saying a line and they say it the same way on every single take, if the previous tip doesn't work, try getting them to say it in a totally different voice. Get them to perform the scene as a famous person or as a famous character. It might not be what's right for the final take, but it may help to break them out of that pre-rehearsed reading of a line. I enjoy asking someone to perform as Gandalf, because then it breaks out from whatever they've been doing in their rehearsal and it lets them find something new and fun to play with. You could also try changing the objective, because that might change how they're performing. You want something live rather than pre-rehearsed. If your actor is lacking energy, then try raising those stakes like we talked about before, the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. You could also try giving them a time limit on the scene. That's a real external thing you're imposing. So say, right, you've only got 30 seconds, we need to get this done. This may lead to them talking too quickly, but you can always slow them down later on another take, but keep that lovely energy that you've generated. If your actor is too fast, which again, super common problem, encourage them to be clear about what they are saying. Maybe imagine that they are having to say this to a toddler, so they have to be super clear with every single word. Even just encouraging them, letting them know that they're a bit fast and encouraging them to slow down can be helpful. Alternatively, encourage them to find those thoughts, again, fresh in the moment. Let them have a beat, have them look at the punctuation and remind them that we need to understand what they're saying. You want them to put a little bit more space between the words and the thoughts. If the scene is feeling oddly disjointed and you're not sure why, try picking up on each other's lines and just going a bit faster. Not in terms of speaking really quickly, but just doing what we call taking the air out. In a real conversation, we tend to interrupt each other and speak over each other. Now, you don't want to be doing that in the sides unless it says to in the stage directions, or often there's a little slash before the dialogue, but you do want it to feel like a natural conversation, and rarely in real life does one person stop And then the next person begin. We tend to pick up on something the other person has said. We talk over each other because we are reacting to the conversation as it happens. Ask your actor to identify the character's thought process. What inspires them to say each line? What word or phrase are they reacting to, possibly from something that you as the reader have said, that inspires them to speak? It may even be that they are reacting to their own lines and to their own thoughts. This is especially true if it is a monologue. If your actor is getting really stressed, it may be time to take a pause. Grab a drink, grab a snack, have a little bit of a walk, and come back to the tape later. Acting is a creative process, and often the harder we push and the more we force things through, the worse the outcome will be. The same is true for you. If you find yourself getting stressed, then take a moment to step away. Your actor needs to focus on the work they're doing, and that's going to be really hard if they're worried about stressing you out or disappointing you. It's really normal to get annoyed and frustrated when things are going wrong, or if your actor isn't performing to their best, but the best thing that you can do to help is help them to remain calm and positive. As I said, your actor may have some big feelings throughout this process, because I know I still do with tapes. That might be excitement, it might be fear, it might be stress, it could be any of these things, especially if the tape is for something big. These emotions can be helpful, especially if the character that they are playing is feeling a similar way, then they can use them in their performance. However, they can also be a hindrance. Sometimes they lead to your actor speaking too fast, or it might just be overwhelming for them. They will likely need a lot of reassurance through this process, or possibly being left alone so they can process their feelings. Some actors won't even want any direction, and the more you try to force it on them, the worse the tape is going to be. Try to have fun. Enjoy playing make-believe. It's something that we as adults don't do anywhere near enough. It is literally one of the best parts of acting, and it is what I love. As I said, it's a chance for you as their caregiver to see them do their work. And realistically, it's very unlikely that they are going to get this role just due to the nature of the business. This is one of the most competitive industries in the world, and remind your actor that this is a chance for them to play this role. They are going to be seen by people playing the role. This is the job. I'm going to link a little video that Bryan Cranston talks about auditions, and I find that one so helpful as an actor now, and I hope your actor will also find it helpful. Once you have your takes, you will likely want to upload them to a computer and edit them. You can edit them on your phone, but it's probably going to be easier if you use a larger screen. There are lots of different free editing softwares available, including things like HitFilm and iMovie, etc. I like using Adobe Premiere Pro. Again, I make a lot of videos, and for me it's worth the investment. It may not be worth it for you. If you're in a rush, then just make sure you have the tapes that you want with a clear beginning and an ending to them, with all the lines nice and clean. Don't make your files too big either, because casting directors just won't accept them. They won't open them. You can use various apps or links online to compress them, or like I say, you can choose that within the edit of certain programs. If you have a little bit more time, then it might be nice to add a few little edits and tweaks just to make sure your video looks the best it can. This can be anything from tweaking the contrasts or the white balance, and maybe adding a fade in and a fade out at the beginning and end of your tape. But this is by no means obligatory. This is also a chance for you to edit your ident and overlay that full body shot with the close-up shot. I personally prefer to export my takes as separate files. I can then upload them to Tagmin. My agent can then look through them all and decide which ones they want to send. Or you can send it as one long file if you prefer. To upload to Tagmin, you will need to log in. After that, find the job that you are auditioning for and upload all of the requested files. Do be sure that you've got all the takes you want of all the scenes and with the correct idents. You will be asked to name your files. I tend to do this very briefly, things like scene 1, take 1, something like that, or ident. It's nice and easy. It's just so that the Yak agency can know which is which. You may be asked to send your files in a different way, potentially by something like WeTransfer or maybe Google Drive. However, Tagmin is the most common. Once your files are uploaded, they are out of your hands and your job is done. Now the hardest part begins, the waiting. You will probably not hear back from a self-tape. Once it's sent, it is gone. If your actor is successful, then you may be asked to send another tape, or you might be asked for an in-person recall, or you may be asked to audition for a different character because maybe they liked the actor, but maybe not for that character. You might hear back the next day, or maybe the next week, or even the next month. Some audition processes can take a really long time with multiple recalls, chemistry reads, etc., stuff like that. especially for larger projects. If your actor is not successful, they are very unlikely to tell you this. Some casting directors are getting better at sending out a no. There's something called the yes or no initiatives, but most won't. They just don't have the time. If you're really lucky, you might get a thank you, but no email, but you're very unlikely to get feedback, especially if this is a first round audition tape. If your actor got really far through the audition process, maybe they were down to the last couple, then you are more likely to get a personal response and maybe some information as to why they didn't get the role. But mostly, you won't be getting that. This is hell emotionally, and honestly, it's the hardest part about being an actor. You start off once you've sent off your tape full of hope, but as each day passes, it gets harder and harder and harder. The uncertainty is so uncomfortable to live with. Your actor may be able to move on and forget about it quickly. That is fantastic, but for more anxious actors, this can be a really challenging time. It's easy to think after an unsuccessful audition, oh, if only I'd done one more take, or maybe if I'd done that line differently, I would have got it. But this kind of thinking is pointless. You can never know why you got a no, and most of the time it's nothing to do with your actor or with their performance. Often it's to do with how they look. It might be their experience, or it might be who they knew, or maybe the casting director was just a bit hungry that day when they were looking at the tape. Who knows? It is easy to assume the worst, but this can be really damaging for your self-esteem and overall mental health. There is no way of knowing if you'd done something differently that things definitely would have turned out better. They might have turned out worse. You can only encourage your actor to do the best they can and to be proud of the work that they've done. Remind your actor that we can learn from our tapes, but we don't need to stress about them. They are often not indicative of the capabilities of your actor. They are just a brief moment in time, often filmed under extraordinary or stressful circumstances. There is no director, there's minimal rehearsal, and a ton of pressure. Remind them they can only do the best they can in that moment, not the best ever. Getting a tape wrong or not getting a role does not mean that your actor is a bad actor. Even if there are problems with their acting, that doesn't mean they can't improve. That's why they go to Yak. They can always work on weaker areas, and with persistence and hard work, they can and will improve. For Yak directors, we're here to support you. And getting things wrong or doing a bad tape, not getting a role, that is a vital part of an actor's journey. We can often learn more from failure than we do from success. Every tape is valuable. Every single one of them helps us to grow as an actor, even if it's just learning what not to do. Many actors go years without work. Years. For the lucky ones, maybe that's just months, but for a lot of us as professional actors, we will go for long stretches of time without any work at all. It may be that your actor only gets 1 or 2 roles in their whole time at the Yak agency, but that doesn't mean that things were for nothing. The time after sending off a self-tape will likely be an incredibly difficult time for your actor, especially if they don't get the role, but you cannot fix this. You can invite them to talk and hold space for their feelings, but be prepared to deal with often negative and potentially cyclical thoughts. It can be so tempting to dive straight in for the silver lining and remind them, well, you were lucky to be seen, or maybe you've booked the room, but just hang on a moment. These comments, they can be helpful later on, but as hard as it seems, the first step is to let it be hard and to let it be uncomfortable. Validate the pain that your actor is feeling and help them to feel seen and heard. They need space to grieve for the role that they didn't get. Not only that, they need to grieve the life that they might have built around that role. They may have created a narrative in their head, things like, oh, getting that role might mean I miss out on school and my friends will be so impressed. And that's a life that they're no longer going to have. Again, they need to be able to grieve this. It can be good to remind them that this is only one role. There will be others, and they can still be proud of the work that they've done. But you are only there to guide them, not to take this pain away. This pain is actually important in many ways. They need to learn how to navigate this, the discomfort, the disappointment, that uncomfortable feeling. That is all part of being a professional actor. Obviously, if your actor is very young, this may not be as relevant, but it can be a good opportunity to talk to them about how we regulate ourselves when we're feeling these big emotions and how we can process all these difficult thoughts and feelings. These feelings may not be worth it for your actor, and if they are experiencing unmanageable levels of upset, then it may be time to step back. Acting should be fun, especially for young actors, and if they're experiencing more downs than ups, then maybe it isn't worth it. Your actor may not be bothered by any of this, and that is brilliant. But if they are, especially if your actor is considering this as a professional career, then they do need to know that this is part of it. These feelings, that is kind of the harsh reality of acting. However, once they know that they are capable of navigating their way through this disappointment, through these big feelings, then they'll know that they'll be able to do it again. And each time it happens, they will start to develop a resilience. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, though. Being strong doesn't make a weight any lighter, it just makes it a little bit easier to carry. And the same is true here. They may also begin to start to tie their self-worth to their tapes and to their auditions. Be super careful and mindful if this begins to happen. Remind them that they are the same awesome person that they were before they did the tape, and they'll be that same awesome person after the tape is done, even if they don't get the role. Acting is something that they do, not something that they are. Really encourage your actor to safeguard their mental health, whether that's through having healthy habits or maybe even talking about things in counselling and in therapy. If your actor has a sibling or a close friend who is also an actor doing auditions, this can complicate things further. It may generate feelings of jealousy or anxiety, and these do need to be really carefully managed and handled. Each actor is a unique individual, and all of our journeys look different. Your actors aren't wrong for experiencing jealousy. They're human. Being happy for someone who has something that you want is a massive ask for an adult, let alone for a child or for a teenager. It's not impossible, but don't hold it against them if this isn't something that happens right away. Remind them of their own strengths and reassure them that their time will come. Thanks so much for watching this self-taping guide for caregivers. I hope it was helpful. As always, if you have any questions, do please let Yak know. Have a great day.